So my name is Stephan, and I work for the Orange County Department of Education. And I wanted to leave this up here because when I saw her slides and I looked at it, this really struck me. I'm the kind of person who, when I see a study, I have to go and look it up, I have to read the entirety, go find the PDF, figure out who funded it, where it came from. And I would encourage, all of you to become nerdy like that. Because what you see now, like who's been scrolling through social media or whatever, you see all these crazy blog posts saying that e-cigs are going to save the world, right? You have this study right here. The new study shows e-cig vapor has a similar level of risk as the air you breathe. I saw that, I'm like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So I went and looked that up. I looked up the paper. And if you go into the study and you look at who wrote it, it's two people who are funded by a cigarette company. So Lorillard Tobacco, who makes the e-cigarette that they were using in that study, funded the study to show that this e-cigarette is as harmless as the air you breathe. So, let me think about that. I'm sure it's a completely unbiased result, right? So I put this up here because I want to apologize to all of you on behalf of us as society. We have failed you. We have decided that money is so important that we're allowing this kind of industry to flourish at the cost of your health. So I have to apologize to you first and foremost. So let me pull up mine, if you can pull up my slides while I'm rambling.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, I come before you as somebody who's very frustrated with tobacco, and you may be thinking like, why are people so worked up about vapes? Why do people care about e-cigs, about Juuls? Why does this stuff matter? And it's because those of us who have been in this field for a long time have seen what the tobacco industry was capable of. The way that they would manipulate people, do market research, find ways to exploit people's insecurities, to target different ethnic groups and minorities, to target women, to co-opt feminism and make smoking part of feminism. To see the ways that they have twisted all of society just to get people to buy their cigarettes. And now when you look at e-cig ads and vape ads, you will see the very same techniques being used over and over again. And so that is why we're concerned, because we've come so far with smoking. Smoking is outdated, it's passé. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Smoking is gross. And we've acknowledged that. But we have this new player on the scene, right? Enter player two, vaping, e-cigarettes. Suddenly, we think, oh, well, this is a new thing. This is not so bad. And yet here we are. All right, we good?
Nope.
Oh, we're having HDMI issues. Good old bent cable. So I wanted to cover some stuff that have been mentioned earlier. So the chemicals that we're finding in e-cigarette aerosol, right? Cadmium, formaldehyde, all these scary sounding chemicals. Who has heard that before? That kind of all these toxic chemicals, right? And who has heard that about cigarettes? Like cigarette smoke, you find rat poison and all these, nasty things. And so when you hear that, you may be imagining like some evil tobacco company guy who maybe like looks like me, right? And he's got this vat going and he's stirring like a witch's brew, and he's like dropping batteries in there and stuff. So that I want to clear this up because it's an important distinction to make. Those things are not being added into the e-liquid or into the cigarette. There are certain additives in cigarettes like ammonia, urea, that are added to heighten the nicotine to make it more addictive. But all those nasty chemicals that we're talking about, those are arising because of chemical changes in the e-liquid when it's aerosolized. Now, why I'm bringing that up is because if you think it's, oh, there's some guy mixing up a witch's brew in a cauldron and throwing batteries in it, you might think, well, but my e-juice guy just uses the FDA-approved PG, VG, and he uses the FDA-approved flavoring. So I know he's not dumping stuff in there. But that's not where those chemicals are coming from. They're not being added in. It's because of the chemical changes when you aerosolize that e-liquid. So all those 7,000 flavorings that are currently available, yeah, so like Monica said, not FDA approved, and actually they just kicked the ball down the field and decided we're not going to regulate until 2022. So again, we have failed you as a society. We decided money was more important. And so as a result, when researchers do analyze, they get samples of this e-liquid and test it and find certain contaminants and all kinds of fun chemicals. So let me show you. Oh, scroll all the way up. All right. Let me know when this is popping up. You good? All right. Yeah. So let me show you this. Who has seen this website before? Anyone? All right, I will allow it just this once. All right, here we go. So, this is a resource that was developed, oh, just got a new cable. So this is a resource that was developed by our office, not by me personally, but our office in conjunction with a few others. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic, which I can appreciate, that's my kind of humor. But what it is just a series of these little shareable tidbits of different chemicals that have been found in e-cig aerosol. So you can see here, again, kind of silly, and you might dismiss it by saying, again, like, oh, my e-juice guy down at vapecornercoolcity.com, he doesn't throw in the batteries and the lighter fluid. He's, Vape Nation, whatever. So my vape guy doesn't throw all that stuff into my e-liquid. But see, this is why it's important that we look at this. Yeah, it's kind of silly, but in reality, that's what happens when you aerosolize these e-liquids and these heavy metals are leaching out of the coil, and you've got all sorts of reactions, and the flavorings themselves oftentimes are the most harmful part. Nicotine is, of course, very harmful, especially to your circulatory system. Even in the absence of tobacco and smoke and carbon monoxide, the nicotine itself does affect your blood vessels' ability to contract and dilate. But that aside, these flavors like cinnamon, popcorn, these are, you may hear, oh, this is GRAS, generally recognized as safe, right, by the FDA. What that means is for ingestion. So when you have like a cinnamon flavored cough drop, right, those flavorings are approved for ingestion. It's not the same as vaporizing it, turning it into an aerosol and breathing it in. It's so important that we make this distinction, right? Because in your head you might think, oh, it's FDA approved propylene glycol, FDA approved vegetable glycerin. The flavorings are all FDA approved, so it should be safe for me, right? So it's really important that we separate that out. And I don't want to find out in 20, 30 years, which is unfortunately sometimes how long it takes for these sorts of cancers to develop, that we were wrong and that all this stuff is terribly harmful for you and that people have been pushing it as a safe way to quit smoking or a safe alternative to smoking. We're accountable for that, which is why we're up here talking about all this stuff, even though it seems like, well, vapes are no big deal, it's not cigarettes, right? So there's more research on here that you can look at. You can click through the different links, you can share it on social media if you feel so compelled. Let's see if I can tab back to this. Wow, this is a lot of open documents. Here we go. Sorry to put you on blast like that. All right, here we go. So this is the other one that I wanted to show you. Something that I didn't bring up earlier is you'll see down here, e-cigs and vape pens. So there is actually a connection with marijuana. I didn't really talk about it tonight. But I get probably just as many questions about marijuana as I do about vapes and e-cigarettes. So I wanted to put this resource up here for you. This is Marijuana Fact Check. It's a partnership between our healthcare agency, Ventura County Behavioral Health. And what you'll see here is if you click through the different links, you'll see all kinds of information about these different topics related to marijuana use among adolescents, all fact-based, research-based. And I found it to be fairly neutral and non-editorialized, not trying to use scare tactics or anything like that. You'd be surprised what you read out there. So do check out MJ Fact Check, Marijuana Fact Check. It's a really good resource for you as well. Let's see if I can back up here. Okay, and then finally, this is kind of what I do. So if you at your school are interested in other sorts of prevention workshops or in getting some funding to do prevention in the school, at the school level, I can also provide that. I can assist with that if you're interested. So please get in touch with me if you are. We have funding available. I do want to save a lot of time for questions, so I will just leave it at this because I want to make sure that we have time to address all the questions. I know we're going to have time. So please, I guess, do we do that right now?
Yeah, sure.
So let's do it. Let's do some Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll bring the panelists up. And if you have a question, just let us know who the question's for. If you can talk loudly, so I don't have to run up and down and try to pass the mic. So any questions for the three panelists at this time? We have a lot of time for questions, so I'm sure they're out there. Yes, in the back.
Everything is urine and blood detectable.
She's asking if it's urine and blood detectable. You mean for
What?
Nicotine is. Nicotine is.
Yeah.
Yeah, nicotine you can detect in urine. Yeah. And in blood. Yeah. Sorry, I can ask you.
So no, yeah. So she asked if you can detect nicotine in the blood and urine. And so after a while, it works its way out. What you're actually seeing are the byproducts when your body is done processing the nicotine, which is called cotinine. And there's a few other byproducts. But what's interesting is a lot of people know about secondhand smoke by this point, right? And how harmful it is, heart disease, cancer, etc. So a lot of questions I get are about, well, what about secondhand vape, secondhand aerosol? Like, is that a thing? And the answer is yes. Although the quantities of the toxic chemicals and carcinogens in aerosol are lower than tobacco smoke, because tobacco smoke is like the perfect weapon, you can still find those sorts of byproducts in bystanders who are surrounding somebody who is using an e-cigarette. So all of those particulate, those matter, are coming out in the aerosol and depositing on surfaces like Monica was saying, and you can actually detect blood levels in the surrounding people. So secondhand vape is a thing, unfortunately.
Here.
So you put up the teaser right there about the vaping and the marijuana, so if you
Yes.
can elaborate on that bridge right there.
Thank you.
Sure, so if you go on mjfactcheck.org, they actually will talk a little bit about what that is and why it looks that way. But who here has heard of that already, using vape pens with marijuana? Okay, so many of you have heard of that, right? And so what is being done is there's a highly concentrated form of marijuana, so they use solvents and processes to get the THC out of it and make it very highly concentrated. Then they'll put it in a vape pen and use that to heat it and breathe it in. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot known about the long-term effects, because when you look at clinical studies in the United States, they cap the THC level much lower than many of these concentrates, where you see THC levels of 80 to 90% even. It's very highly potent stuff, so I honestly can't tell you what the long-term effects are of using hash oil. I can tell you that overall the effects of using marijuana, especially when you're between 12 and 25, is crucial time for brain development. It can have a staggering effect on your ability to absorb things, learning, memory, and attention. Those parts of the brain, like, you got the neurobiology person here. But there's so many receptors for cannabinoids like THC in the parts of the brain that control learning, memory, and attention. So that's where you see the most effects of marijuana use, especially between 12 and 25, because there's so much going on in brain development during that period. Using that can have drastic effects on your academic achievement. And when I say that, probably each of you can think of like one person who smoked weed all the time and still gets straight A's, or went to Harvard or something, right? We all know somebody like that. So it's important to put that out there that, yeah, there's always going to be people who can beat the system, and that, you know, they were able to achieve great things in spite of using drugs or tobacco, right? But if you look at what the literature says, probability-wise, it doesn't look good. Those who are used earlier, marijuana use it earlier and use it more frequently, they're more likely to suffer cognitively and to develop dependence. Yes, unfortunately, some people do become addicted to marijuana. I know that that's kind of controversial for some people, because we, again, might know one or two people who, you know, it was no big deal for them and they stopped using it, so therefore it's not addictive, right? But unfortunately, there are people who become addicted to it, especially those who start very early and use a lot. So that was kind of a long answer to your question. I hope that was...
What about this highly concentrated form that you're talking about? Is it legal?
So yes, now that marijuana has been legalized, it is one of the products. Manufacturing is still illegal. You have to be a licensed facility or something like that. But yeah, it can be purchased by those over 21, right? So it's complicated, and it's a risky endeavor, because again, cannot tell you what the long-term effects are. Yes, in the back.
What's popcorn lung?
Popcorn lung. So okay, so one of the flavoring chemicals that gives popcorn that buttery flavor, when you actually breathe that in, can be very harmful. So if you like Google popcorn lung and look up the history, if you're like really bored or something, You will see that there was this factory where they were manufacturing butter popcorn. I love Orville Redenbacher. I love to eat that stuff, right? So they're manufacturing this buttered popcorn, and a bunch of the workers started getting very, very ill and had severe lung disease. And people, what is happening? And so they looked at it, and it was actually that flavoring agent of the butter flavor that was becoming a mist, a very fine mist, as they were processing the popcorn. They were breathing it in, and it was depositing itself in the tissues of the lung and actually leading to lung disease. So now there's this whole thought of, right, if you use popcorn flavored e-liquid, are you gonna get popcorn lung, right? And so there are certain flavorings like cinnamon popcorn that are shown to irritate the respiratory tract. Now, whether we're gonna see an epidemic of popcorn lung, I don't know. But yeah, absolutely great point. Good question.
You were saying how companies are targeting feminists? I was confused by that.
Yeah, if you're really actually interested, I'm very passionate about it. If you look up the history of Virginia Slims, some of the folks in here who've been around a while might recognize that. Look up Virginia Slims and the way that their campaigns that they did over the years. It was interesting because some of you may not know Marlboro was actually initially a feminine women's cigarette, right? It's gross to say that. Until it wasn't selling, then they flipped it into the Marlboro Man and turned it into a hyper-masculine product, right? So if you look at Virginia Slims, what it was doing, they marketed them these long, slender cigarettes, right? And said, "You've come a long way, baby." Saying that during the height of the civil rights and women's liberation movement, it was a kind of a way to say, we get you, we believe in your empowerment, and here's a product that can go with that lifestyle of yours. So it's really despicable, honestly, if you look. So do look it up. Look up the history of Virginia Slims if you're interested. It is pretty horrendous. Yes?
What do you know about essential oil pens? Like they're called a monk, and my daughter corrected me. I said it incorrectly today. Called it a monk pen. She said it was a monk pen. But I'm just wondering what you know about those and what you think.
Okay, so I have seen all manners of incredible. Ever since vape pens and e-cigs started coming around, I've seen vape your vitamins. I've seen the vape diet where you vape your food, like just the silliest things you can possibly imagine. So now, because like aromatherapy, essential, we've all like walked around through the mall and seen those diffusers like pouring essential oils into the air. So now people have got it into their heads like, well, that's fine and all, but what if I could vape that? So now they like seriously have vape pens with like eucalyptus oil and stuff where you can vape essential oils. And so I feel like most people understand generally you should not be inhaling directly straight into your mouth essential oils.
You can look up videos on YouTube about that, and what they say is that you're not inhaling it into their lungs.
Because you hold it in your mouth and blow it out the nose.
And I just think it's a little silly.
I mean, I'm not here to judge your lifestyle choices. Just from a health perspective, generally avoid inhaling things that are not air. Especially because when we talk about regulation, right? I keep coming back to regulation is so boring, you guys. It's so boring. But without it, you get unicorn puke flavored e-juice with God knows what in it, and then you get unregulated things like the essential oils. You cannot regulate that as a supplement or anything like that. It's an essential oil. So I would, in general, just discourage that. I mean, from a health perspective. Okay? Not here to judge your people's lifestyle choices. Yes?
Are the marijuana pods flavored so a parent might not be able to detect if their kids are smoking marijuana?
So hash oil, the chemicals in marijuana that give it sort of that really nasty, skunky smell, or like lemon, or have these different flavors to it, a lot of them don't make it through that process of turning it into a concentrate. Sometimes they'll add it back in, but yeah, sometimes people will add their hash oil into e-liquid and mix it together like that as well. So it's tough to say. It's a gamble. I've been walking around and somebody's been vaping and clearly using hash oil, and skunked up like a Snoop Dogg tour bus. It was like super strong. But there have been other cases where it dissipates very quickly. So it really does vary. It varies, absolutely. So that's why you really have to be vigilant. I mean, you can't count on the old ways, which was they'll always smell like a skunk when they come in. Nowadays, you have to be watching the behavior and making sure that you have really open communication and trust with your kids, because they want to come to you and talk to you about this stuff and get the deal from them, the real deal. But if that conversation gets shut down, because if I bring up alcohol or drugs to my parents, they're going to think that I'm using it and I'm in big trouble, then later on down the line, if maybe they're thinking, I really want to stop using it, but they don't feel comfortable coming to you as a parent, that's tragic. When I speak to youth who have been involved in alcohol and drug use, and I ask them, hey, like, I talk to parents all the time. What do you want me to tell parents? What's the number one thing that you wish your parents had done for you? And they always tell me the exact same thing, which is, show me that you care, talk to me, listen to me, and give me rules and boundaries. That sounds so dumb, right? No one believes that when I say that. And I ask them, like, rules and boundaries, what do you mean? What about the parents who like have drinking parties and allow their kids to drink and don't care? And they're like, exactly. To me, that just said that my parents didn't care enough to give me that stuff. And so they're never, and I'm like, I'm not even spoon feeding this to you, you're just telling me this. And it's so meaningful for somebody who's 13, 14, 16, whatever, for you to believe that if I want to talk to my parents about alcohol and drugs, we're going to have a non-judgmental, calm, rational conversation. That shouldn't be such a far-fetched idea. I can see like something like that would never happen. But all the parents who are in here, it's because they all really care about you. They want to be here and they want to talk to you about this stuff. So please take advantage.
Coming from the county, are you embedding more curriculum with the health classes about all of these issues that are happening and on the rise? Is this going to be covered more in depth in the health curriculum in high school?
So that is part of what I was saying with my services. We can provide funding to schools who would like to become trained in some of these curricula around e-cigarettes, around nicotine, refusal skills, decision making. Now it's really a district decision on how much they want to have that embedded, or we also have community-based organizations and the healthcare agency who can come in and provide that. But I strongly feel that you get the best results when you use evidence-based curricula over a long period of time, taught by instructors that the students have a connection with. I mean, if you have a random dude like me come in, it's one thing. But if there's a teacher who has a really good relationship with the students and a good rapport and can answer their questions, I think that's the most effective thing. And so I'd be happy to assist with that.
The current curriculum that they have to take self-class to graduate, is
Right.
this being embedded in that as it is in the
I mean,
last couple of years?
and-
I'm not in health class, so I'm just wondering. If
Right.
it's coming from the county Department of Ed.
Yeah, I mean, and to clarify, I provide assistance to districts and schools. It's not an oversight thing, so I don't regulate what each school and district does. It's a district and school decision. But I mean, if you believe that this is an important topic and should have more focus, I'm sure that the school and the district would love to hear that you're interested in seeing what kinds of supports we can develop and provide that assistance for the school. We'd be more than happy to assist. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's being done to stop it being sold online? Because, I mean, if I go to my wine club and I buy a case of wine, I gotta be there to sign for it when it shows at my door and show my ID. I am under the impression that that is not happening with any of these e-cig products. They can order whatever they want, nobody has to sign for it. Well, why is law enforcement not regulating this?
So it's a multifaceted question. So let me, again, we have failed you as a society. Just gonna throw that out there again. I apologize, young people. Yeah, so regulating online commerce, right, especially interstate, is a very difficult thing. The age verification is laughable, as I'm sure anybody can tell you. Go on, look at it. Are you 21? You promise you're 21? Okay, you can come into our website. So There are some websites that are doing a better job with age verification, but unfortunately, there are so many ways around it that, I mean, it's really a federal question at that point. And
Is it
so,
true though that they are delivering the products and they do not have to do age verification? I know clearly the e-cig is not illegal because that's not the drug, it's the juice that's, you know.
so I should, to clarify, in the state of California, any e-cigarette, vape device, they're all included under tobacco products. So you have to be 21 to purchase those legally. But yeah, the age verification, it's not like they require, you know, an adult signature and they're going to card you and swipe it or things like
So
that.
don't you think that's part of the problem? I mean, it's hard to get alcohol. Honestly, I'd rather they drink than be doing all this other stuff. You know, but it's harder to get alcohol than any of this other stuff now.
So, again, multifaceted. I would emphasize alcohol and binge drinking in this developmental
It's
age.
not good either.
Correct. Extremely damaging to the developing brain. So just want to make sure that I put that out there, just to make sure we're all on the same page. But yeah, it does seem in some respects that the regulations on that are much tighter, right? So perhaps we should be doing a better job with age verification. Marcy, I think
Can
would
we
like
just chime in?
to chime in.
Alcohol's been around a really, really long time, and we've kind of come up with ways to regulate that. These things are brand new, and I think that's part of the problem. So I just had to chime in. Sorry.
So, I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, you did. You verified to me that there really is
It's-
not a regulation.
It's spotty. It is spotty at best. Yes?
Is there a big difference in the amount of students in our district that use vape pens compared to vape pens with marijuana? Or are they really similar statistics?
So that's interesting. They, until this last survey, did everybody take the Healthy Kids survey this year already?
Yeah.
Is it later?
Yeah, they should have.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
actually,
oh, well,
no,
it's
11th,
9th and
11th,
11th, so if
maybe
you're
not.
not in one of those, you wouldn't have taken it. So they actually just added that specific question this year of using vape pens to use marijuana. Previously, it was just used an electronic e-cigarette or vape, or used marijuana. They hadn't added in like edibles or using a vape pen for that. So I actually don't know. I can tell you that the statistic for using e-cigarettes here in Capital USD is actually a bit higher than the county average, unfortunately. And that just means that there's room for improvement, right? That's good. Silver lining, come on, silver lining. It's you know, every district struggles with certain things, but that just means that there's more to be done. So, yeah.
What would you say to the school district that is permissive or allows the kids to vape in the bathroom and stuff like that? What would you say to them if you heard that that was occurring?
So, Capital Unified is very concerned. They are very concerned about the vaping issue. So I don't want anything that we've said to be interpreted as that this district is lax and turns a blind eye to vaping. I assure you that's absolutely not the case. The many conversations I've had, both at the district level and with the principals and APs, have shown that they're very, very concerned about this issue and are desperately seeking solutions to the issue. And even some of the schools are looking at devices that can detect the vapor in the bathrooms, just because it's become such a big problem. So I want to emphasize that the district and the schools are very, I would be surprised if you had heard otherwise. But of course, I mean, we could dialogue about that afterward. But I assure you, the district is very, very concerned about this issue. And we're working to support them as much as possible. Okay, I think your hand's up next, and then we'll go like that. Something like that. Yeah. Sir, in the, yeah. Yes, yes.
What is CBD?
Okay, well, actually, him, but that's okay. So CBD is cannabidiol, and that's another one of the cannabinoids, which is a chemical that's specific to a cannabis plant. And so that's one of the other ones. You probably heard THC. CBD is the other one, the other big one. That you've probably heard about like in the news, right? You've seen like the Sanjay Gupta special with, you know, the little kids who are suffering with seizure disorders. And so there's a lot of emerging research about possible therapeutic uses for CBD. Now, I say that, but there's also a whole lot of fraud. Again, we have failed you as a society. Researchers look at They bought a bunch of CBD oil off the internet from a bunch of different vendors and said, oh, let's test this. Let's see how much CBD there is versus how much they said was in there. And the results were wild.